You know, if we're being honest, who among us haven't used a frozen margarita as an ice pack? Hello, Interwebs! It's that time of week yet again to review another episode of the MCU Hawkeye Disney Plus series. This time, episode... I don't know why I laughed there. I'm tired. This time, episode 5, Partners. Am I right? I'll be honest, this might be a little bit goofy because it's been a long day for me and I've been to the dentist, so apologies if I'm a little bit wonky this evening. But that aside, getting into the actual review of the episode, staying spoiler-free up front, and then we'll get into spoilers in just a moment. This episode was definitely solid. I did really enjoy it, and I think that there are a ton of really great character moments in here, especially again between Kate and Hawkeye. I thought are the really strong suit here. And there was also a couple little adorable moments both for Kate's mother and Jack, and a few other things here and there. But for the most part, nothing like truly elevated the show so far as much as last episode did. Like, last episode was a truly fantastic mix of action, characterization, fun. This episode definitely didn't have those standout moments and was much more about transitioning our characters from this kind of places that they were in prior to this episode and moving them into what I expect will be the finale of the show. That being said, though, there are some really fun moments here, as well as a really cool kind of surprise appearance that I won't spoil for you if you haven't not seen the episode yet, but a cool little reveal towards the end of this that I was like, oh, that's really cool, and I'm starting to see how they're beginning to tie things into other elements of the MCU during this phase of the MCU. So a lot of really cool stuff going on here, but none of it really like elevated it for me. But I did enjoy this episode overall, and it leads me being very excited and leaves me very excited going into the final 2 episodes of the show. But with that said, that's about everything that I can say spoiler-free, so if you have not seen the episode yet, just know we're going to go full into spoilers after this point. Alright, with that warning out of the way, let's get into the recap of the episode. We start off with kind of a disappointing resolution to last week's cliffhanger with Jack holding Ronin's sword to Hawkeye's neck. I was kind of hoping there would be some sort of confrontation, especially given that Jack does know how to sword fight here, but I guess it kind of makes sense that he would immediately like bring it down because he knows that Hawkeye is a superhero. And if we're going off of my still ongoing theory that Jack is just a good guy, it just being nice, and he's definitely the red herring of the show, it makes sense that Jack would be like, oh, actually, I don't want to fight Hawkeye. He's cool. I like him. And it's also revealed that Kate Bishop's mother is there as well. And this was a really nice scene where all 4 of them are sitting down, sort of talking things out, and Hawkeye reveals that he's working a case with Kate. And initially, I was a little bit bothered because I thought Kate's mother was a little bit too quick to be okay with her daughter being involved with a freaking Avenger. But this was ultimately fixed for me a few seconds later when she walked Hawkeye to the elevator and basically gave him a kind of rundown and said, look, don't endanger my daughter. Don't put her in danger. And I liked her connecting with Hawkeye through his kids. She sort of assumes, like, I'm assuming you have kids. And Hawkeye definitely making that connection between, you know, his being a parent and Kate being kind of a surrogate daughter for him. And that begins basically the theme of this episode with Kate kind of becoming a surrogate daughter for Clint. Then immediately we go into another really wonderful scene with Kate and Jack and her mother all hanging out. And this scene just kind of proved to me how adorable Jack is. Again, I know Jack is probably not a perfect human being. I mean, he's a CEO, so he's probably done some terrible stuff, as we've already kind of seen in the series so far with him stealing the sword that was not his. But that being said, I don't think he's as horrible as Kate is hoping that he is, and this scene kind of proved that. Like, his constant misuse of aphorisms and his dancing was truly sweet and endearing, and I like that it gave Kate a quick little moment to smile because she saw her mother being happy for once with Jack. And I like that subtle shift in Kate's character here. It was a nice scene, and honestly a very needed scene to not only humanize Kate as this not spoiled brat character completely, but also humanize Jack and her mother as well. But we also get a little hint at my ongoing theory here that Kate's mother is actually the main villain of this series, because she does make a little call as soon as Hawkeye leaves, which I'm assuming is her being like, hey, yo, Hawkeye's onto us. So kind of leading into my theory there. But then on the street, Hawkeye gets a call from his wife, and I loved the scene because, again, it just showcases that his kids understand, they know that he's a superhero, they're used to it, but they are a little bit disappointed that he's not coming home for Christmas. But I also liked Hawkeye's wife, but being like right there to help him, kind of being like his oracle to his Batman, and very much being like, hey, I got this information for you, I understand, you go get that Rolex, you do what you gotta do. Again, I just love this kind of twist on this dynamic, with her being very supportive and helpful, and not just being the kind of like, oh, I wish you would come home wife. I think it just adds multiple layers to this relationship that I think is really wonderful. Then we get probably my favorite sequence of the entire episode, where Kate comes over to kind of give Hawkeye a little bit of holiday cheer. I also love that he was using the ice packs, the frozen margaritas as ice packs. And then their whole like dynamic together, again, building out Kate as a surrogate daughter for Clint, was just a lot of fun. Like him teaching her how to do the flick thing, talking about trick arrows, the writing on the board, all of it like classic MCU type of humor that worked really well for the scene. And then we also got a very humanizing moment where Kate asks Hawkeye about his, best shot, and Hawkeye kind of revealing his beginnings of his relationship with Natasha and the kind of trauma and pain that he still has associated with that. And I liked that Kate kind of saw a moment where she realized that, being a superhero is not all it's cracked up to be. There is things that you carry with you, that it's about like mitigating loss instead of like being able to just be the revel in the superhero of it all. And so I thought that was a really wonderful scene. And then I also really enjoyed that Kate basically figured out that he was Ronin, and kind of having this conversation about being like, hey, you are more than your worst day, but him being like, no, this is something that's carried with me. And so this whole, kind of reflecting the whole themes of this series about Hawkeye needing to orient himself forward and not carry all that trauma, because that's what Natasha gave to him, a chance to be a better person and to live a life. And whether or not he should be forgiven for his murder of people is something that's coming back to haunt him with the character of Echo. And so I thought that was just a good sort of, touching upon the theme of moving past PTSD, but also him not being willing to let go of the horrible things he did, as possibly well he shouldn't. Also should mention the boomerang arrow bit was hilarious. I'm assuming it's a reference to something that happens in the comics, but I just thought it was hysterical here. But then the next part of the episode has Kate and Hawkeye splitting off, and Kate goes to visit the Larpers in order to get Hawkeye's trick arrows back. And I was a little bit confused on this part. Again, we get a little bit more of the Larper, like, aren't Larpers a little bit weird jokes, which I'm kind of like, on. I don't find it particularly funny. It's not like offensive, but it's just sort of like, I've seen it before. Hey, look, they're nerds. But I also found it weird that they were willing to commit a little bit of illegal crimes just for eventually what we learned to be like costume materials. It's just like, go to a Michael's. Like, you're going to commit crimes for what you can buy at a Michael's. It felt a little bit off for me there, but clearly it's setting up that these Larpers are going to create Kate or Hawkeye's costume that they're going to be using at the end of the season. So I'm sure that that's just building out, like, they're going to get a cool like superhero costume upgrade at some point in the near future. But then we also get Clint going off to see Kazi and basically trying to convince him to talk to Maya, aka Echo, to get her to let Ronin go, which obviously is not going to happen. And so this scene felt like a little bit of treading water here, but it's sort of pushing Kazi, I'm assuming, to eventually, probably next episode, confront Echo about her going after Hawkeye and going after who she thinks is Ronin, and sort of creating a conflict there. Also, we got another allusion to presumably the Kingpin and Vincent D'Onofrio. I was hoping we get to see him this episode, but unfortunately that'll probably have to wait till next episode, but I'm still calling that's going to be the reveal in just a little bit. But then Kate and Hawkeye meet back up, and they realize that they need to go after the MacGuffin Rolex that Hawkeye is looking for, that was stolen in the very first episode, and they arrive at an apartment. Again, this was a really wonderful sequence where Hawkeye's kind of teaching her how to break into houses, but she's sort of like, I'm just going to go in, and she gets in with this guy by helping him carry his bags. Really hilarious. But then she sneaks into the apartment, and there was the strobing lights. And I like that this is, again, kind of, as we later learn, showcasing that Echo is a deaf woman. And I thought that this was like a cool nod to that eventually Hawkeye realized, like, oh, those are strobe lights for a silent alarm for someone who can't hear. And eventually Kate finds the Rolex, as well as a notepad of someone who is searching for Hawkeye, and obviously that reveals to Hawkeye that it's Echo. But he's starting to fight Splinter Cell, I'm just going to call her Splinter Cell for a second, over on the other ledge. Cool fight sequence here. All of this was a lot of fun, like Maya coming in and attacking Kate trying to zipline over. Good, just the choreography, this was all great. And I like the moment where Kate almost falls and dies, and then Hawkeye realized that she could have died in that moment, again, connecting to her as a kind of surrogate father and trying to get her to get out of there. It kind of just sort of reflected that entire dynamic of him being a parent to her. But Kate runs back up to the roof, and we get the amazing reveal here that Splinter Cell is actually Yelena, Natasha's sister from the Black Widow movie. Really great to see her in this. I loved her in the Black Widow movie. She was probably my favorite part of that film, and so I was just like, oh, this is so cool to see her show up here. And last we saw her, she was sort of joining the kind of like Dark Avengers team that we've seen being built in the background of a few different MCU series going on here. So I'm excited to see where this is ultimately going. But this ultimately leads Hawkeye, once they fight off both Echo and Black Widow, to try to push Kate away and say, hey, I'm done with you. I don't want you to get hurt. I'm pushing out of here because I want to make sure that you're safe. Kind of a regular dynamic that we've seen in a lot of shows like this. So it's not exactly treading new ground, but it fits exactly the themes of what this episode was trying to get at, with Hawkeye being a surrogate father and really leaning into that dynamic. So overall, with that surprise reveal at the end of this episode, I think it elevated it a little bit more. But overall, again, this was a solid episode. It had a lot of fun moments. Definitely had a good core theme of like parenthood and being a father and being a daughter. And I thought that all of that was really nice. But at the end of the day, this one didn't like knock it out of the park. I don't think it was as wonderful as last episode, but certainly a very solid one overall. So that's my thoughts on the episode, but I'd love to hear your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this episode of Hawkeye. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more reviews of Hawkeye, Wheel of Time reviews, and all that other stuff. I have my main channel as well where I do video essay stuff at Jessie Gender. But beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, live long and stay sexy.